Welcome to the live stream on the release highlights for the 2023 Release 2 for Sage Intacct Construction. In this live stream, we're going to cover the release notes that are here on your dashboard. We're not going to go into every release note. We're going to cover the pertinent ones for construction and the most applicable ones for the software in general that you might want to know about, okay? So when you log into Sage Intacct, just a tidbit here, they're right here in this section. You can click on the blue link here, and it'll bring up the release notes. If you scroll down a bit, this kind of covers the some high level and some country by country notes. But you've got your changes here with the blue links that give you even more detail as to what they have done in the release. Okay, so for example, if I click on this one here, it's going to bring up a separate, more detailed article. Okay, the release notes are very easy to understand and they step you through the changes, and they're written in layman's terms. So you'll definitely enjoy the release notes that they have put together. So the first one I'm going to cover here is in the accounts payable release note area, the list enhancements. So I'm going to click here on that detail just to show you. And you can see a little bit about what it says here. So I'm going to navigate to the vendor list, just like it says, and we're going to look at the change that they've done to the view in the vendor list. This also applies to the customer list as well. Okay. Navigate here to accounts payable. I'm going to go to the vendors list. And you're going to see here the list that you're used to seeing, okay? What it is doing currently in the version of Intacct, the Release 1 version, if you click on the vendor name here, it would pull up a subledger report that lists out kind of the bills that have been generated against that vendor. Now it does this. It actually pulls up the vendor record like you would expect, and do the where you can edit the record, change address info, basically just your vendor record. Okay, so there's a change there to the list here. Okay, also they have turned on a beta interface that you can view up here to see the newer version of what they're doing with the lists, so you can see and filter a little easier and move columns around a little easier. Okay, so as you can see, there's some filter boxes up here. There's also an advanced filter box over here that you can click on, where you can put different criteria, such as status equals active, and maybe I want to see on hold vendors. Okay, so you can do multiple filters. You can just keep adding here, and you can say and or on the specific filters. Okay, so just look at your and or criteria down here when you're doing that advanced filtering. Okay, as you're clicking through your different lines. Okay, so just to note there, a little more advanced filtering on the view of your list. Also, when you want to move a column now with the beta view, you can drag your column and see this blue bar that's moving. And you can move your columns just by left clicking, holding it down and dragging, and now it moves over. Okay, you can also do things like that. And it gives you anything that contains the Buffalo word in the vendor name. Okay. So just a little more ease of use with the vendor list and customer list. Same applies over there. with moving your columns around, filtering, and when you click on the vendor name, it actually brings up the vendor record. You can also do some sorting here if you want and do multiple sorts. So I want to sort by vendor ID, then I want to sort by maybe something else in here, vendor name or comments or something. Just that you click up here in the little cog to get to that sort. Okay. So if you want to do a couple different sort and then a sort and a subsort, you can use that that feature up here. Okay. Otherwise, you click on the column status or column heading, and it'll sort by that specific column. Okay. Also, you have your views still here, just like you did before, where you can manage and play with your and toggle your different views. Okay. If you want to turn off beta, just come back up here, turn it off, and you're back to your original view. Okay. So just a little bit of a change on the beta list for vendors and customers there on what it does there with a name, and the column configuration, sorting, and filtering's a little easier. All right, so let's talk about drilling down on financials. So one of the features that they turned on in release 2 is being able to drill down into an account group. Okay, so in the current version, this number here in the total is black. You can't drill down. Okay, so if you notice, these are blue. If I click on this account group, cash, I now get a detail of anything in that account group. Let me scroll down here. And you can see it's giving me the detailed Wells Fargo checking, petty cash, and anything in that account group, it's going to pull up. Okay, so didn't have that before. You would have to drill down into each account separately. Now you can just click on the account group total.
Very cool.
Okay, so now I'm going to kick it over to Mike. He's going to show the service dashboards.
Thank you, Lisa. Those things were very cool. I know I was like, some of them I was seeing for the first time, and I'm like, whoa, that's awesome. So, yeah, one of the nice new things now also in the system is if we go over to dashboards, is they've built some additional out-of-the-box dashboards that you get with your instance now. So if you come over to your dashboard section here and you click on the dashboard list, what you're going to be able to get into is over in the top right. You do have to load them up, so they just don't automatically appear here. You have to come into here and click on the dashboard library. And when you click on the dashboard library, it shows you the available default dashboards that you can install. So for example, some of the new ones, there's an accounts payable manager, an AR manager. I believe there's some new financial ratio stuff. So some of this stuff has already been downloaded for you, but System CFO. So you can come into here and say, you know what, I want the accounts payable manager dashboard, and you can click install here. And when you do that, you're going to have the ability to name it, so you can rename it. It will pre-fill to AP manager, but you can rename it and call it whatever you want. And then you're going to click save. And when you do that, that's going to load it up, and now it's going to be available on your menu. So if I click close here and I go back to my dashboards, I can see now I have, apologize. One thing you need to do is after you do install it, you're going to want to refresh your window. So once I refresh it and click on the dashboards, now I should see my AP manager. So take a look at them. When you click on the AP manager, it's going to give you the new dashboard, and I got some really cool little widgets in here, as far as top 10 AP balances, cash balances, stuff like that that are specific to the accounts payable, along with some workflow dashboard information as well. So if I want to enter a bill, I can click right from my dashboard and get into my enter bill screen. So there's several of these there that you can download. I believe I did the AR Manager earlier. So this is a new one too as well, the AR Manager. I like this, top 10 customer by revenue. So you can see which customers are providing you the most revenue in your organization. And then who owes you the most, or who do you owe who owes you the most money? Okay, so you can track that information and drill down into them. So go ahead, get into those libraries under dashboards, dashboard libraries, and go ahead and install those dashboards and see if they're pieces you'd like to use. Keeping in mind, if you do install them and you really don't want to use it, you can always come into here and remove it as well, or modify it. So you can do that. So those are available for you in this release. In addition to that, there's some other access and editing tools that are available for you as well. And we'll start getting into those a little bit here. One of the first new function you can do is in the accounts receivable module. So if I go into accounts receivable, and if it has to do with what's called posted payments, so you put some cash receipts in, you need to reverse a cash receipt for some reason. One of the limitations in the past was if I go to click on posted payments and I want to do a reversal, I couldn't change the accounting date that I want, or the posting date that I wanted to use that reversal in. So you were stuck in using the reversal date of the original invoice. Now I can come into here and say I need to reverse this payment. I can click reverse. And it's going to come into here and it's going to have a new field here called reverse the transaction on date. So you can pick effectively, hey, April's closed. I want this to be reversed as of May 1st. And then you can also expand and put a memo on it. Okay. And you could submit that. So it's a little bit increased functionality and gives you some additional flexibility in what dates you want your edits posted to. Now you do need to enable this functionality in the settings. So for example, at the top level, if I go under setup configuration, it's about halfway down. You'll notice in the enablement section, there's going to be a button right here, and I had this turned on prior, but you do want to make sure enable edit of reversal dates is checked off, or you won't have that availability. Once this release comes out, you can make sure you come here and check that off. And then in addition to that, you do need to assign some additional security in the system. So for example, if we go into the security section, so you would go into the accounts payable role, or the role of the users that need this ability, accounts receivable, excuse me. I'm just going to show you administration here. And under subscriptions, you'll notice in accounts receivable, if I click on permissions, there's going to be under payments here, posted payments, you're going to have a new security item called edit reversals. So even if you do enable it, you have the ability to secure it out and only let certain individuals be able to edit that reversal date.
And Mike, I did have that. I turned on the functionality and configuration, and that was blank. So people will have to come in and check mark it, even on the admin role.
Correct. Yep. And that's really for any new functionality that's above and beyond what was already in the permissions in your setup. Is you do want to make sure, especially when a new release comes out, is it doesn't hurt to come into here and check your permissions, because even like Lisa says, even an administrator role, if there's new features and in there, you have to come in and turn them on. They just won't turn them on automatically, and obviously that's safe, being safer that way to make sure that those who need to be in there can be in there, and also secure it so others can't. So something to consider when that release date comes is just go check your security and make sure that your permissions have any additional permissions that need to be. And actually, with that being said, let's go back into permissions just to give you an idea. For example, if I go into, and I'm just going to use my administrator role for now. If I go into subscriptions here, and for example, like even in like General Ledger, for example, if I click on permissions, you'll see some of these buttons that aren't checked. And, considering admin, they should have all these checked by default. But the problem is these are new features and functionalities, so they leave them off. So you can kind of see here, which permissions the admin doesn't have access to anymore. And then you could determine if you want to add them individually, or just come up to the top here and, do another all, and that'll add all the new permissions to the admin. And then make sure you do it on the reporting as well. So here's the reports on the all there, and that'll update your permissions. Okay. So you gotta make sure you do that. One of the other nice features that have come out here related to permissions, and is basically they've given some additional permissions or rights to the user type, the employee user type. So, just to give you a recap, business user is your power user. They're gonna be able to, they need to enter documents and data throughout the system. They're going to need to be a business user. There's also an employee user where, mainly they have view only rights into the system. They can view information, view reports, but they can't do data entry. They're limited data entry. They can do some timesheet entry, some approvals, and that's about it. So what they did was they expanded that a little bit. And for example, we're in as a full business user, but if I go to order entry, for example, or purchasing, so what they added here was now they give the employee user the ability to view order entry transactions and purchasing transactions, not do any data entry, but to view them. Before they were limited to just reports. They couldn't actually see the actual, they could only see the, the quotes and they couldn't go into the actual counting documents. Now they can actually view all the documents within the order entry and purchasing module. And of course, that's all depending on if you choose to allow them to do that. Mm-hmm. But now with an employee user, if you look at the permissions, and I'm going to go back into admin, and there's a new permission now in the purchasing and order entry area. So I'll just use purchasing for an example. If I click on permissions, under order and purchasing transactions, you'll see a field here called purchasing transactions and order entry. It'll be called order entry transactions. You'll see a couple buttons here, view all for employee user. So do you want the employee user to be able to view purchasing transactions? If the answer is yes, you click view all for the employee. Okay. And it looks like there's an override exception here that you can do as well.
And it's just so very helpful to have some of those, your purchasing manager at the minimum, be able to see that entire accounting workflow instead of just the PO. Like, did it get invoiced? Did it, or did the bill come in from the vendor? All that good stuff. So.
Right. So now they have accessibility to view those transactions and, interpret the data as needed. So that sums up the access and editability features. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa now to go over some new features in the construction area.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, this is a pretty simple one, but it's a pretty powerful one. So when you're looking at your projects, I'm at the top level, so I'm going to hit private here. So if we look at one of our projects here, and hopefully we pick one here that's got some commitments on it, but the purchasing commitments tab is a new one. So current version, you're going to see all these tabs up to estimates. The purchasing commitments is going to list here your POs and your subcontracts that relate to this project. Okay, so it's, Intact got some feedback, trying to get to a little bit more detail when you're looking at your project instead of having to go navigate down to purchasing, find them in here and in here. Okay, so you can drill down right here. Anything blue and Intact is drillable. Drill down to the actual PO record that is in the system. Okay, again, anywhere that has an attachment, you can pull that up as well. You can actually print a copy of your PO if you want to, if your vendor lost it or didn't get it, for example. Okay. So just a nice new screen they've added here on the purchasing commitments on the actual project. Okay. Okay, now we're going to cover the summarization of the time and material invoicing in the release notes under construction down here. Okay, so now what the billings to customers are going to show on time and material is your project contract line as a summarized line on your invoice to your customer. Okay, but you have to tell the system to do that. So let's look at a couple things setup wise, and I'm going to walk through how this works. So we're going to come over here to the actual project contract. I'm going to come into this one right here. We're going to come into the lines on that contract. Okay, so I've got two lines here. And the change that has been made is that if I code an accounts payable bill to this line, this cost code, and I code an accounts payable bill to this cost code, two separate ones, or even the same one. But let's say there's two separate vendors, two separate bills. It's going to group them on my invoice to my customer based on my line item here that I've coded on this project contract line. Okay, so I'm going to go look at the other one, the other line. Same premise here. So I've got a couple cost codes right here that if I code two separate bills from two separate vendors to those cost codes, it's going to summarize on my bill to my customer based on this item I've set down here. Okay. So I've entered in 4 bills, two bills that go to the two separate cost codes on this line item, and 2 electrical bills from 2 separate vendors that went to those cost codes. And we're going to now generate a bill to show you how it looks with those separate line items. Okay. So the one thing I do want to point out before we do that is I have to say I want to summarize these. If I have 2 separate bills going to 2 separate cost codes, I want to summarize them into a single line item entry into this electrical one as a single total. Then I have to check mark that box. Okay, so just a note there. Now, if you're not quite sure, like setting up projects, setting up the contract, how to do billing, get on our bug.bangerinc.com and YouTube channel and look up our videos. We'll also post them to the live stream, but look up the videos on how to do billing in Sage Intacct for time and material. So I'm covering the changes in this live stream, not how to do that entire process. Okay. So we're going to generate an invoice here. Put in some dates, pick that contract I'm working with. Okay, I'm going to scroll down. I need to put a number in here. So here's the 4 bills I entered in recently. Here's a really old one. Okay, I'm going to uncheck that one for the moment. Here's the 4 I entered in to 4 separate cost codes. But they're going to, these 2 are going to the electrical, and these 2 are going to the general requirements. Okay, so on my invoice, I'm expecting these to be grouped and these 2 to be grouped. Okay, so I have summarized entries on the setting I showed just on the previous screen. So that's going to summarize those on my invoice. Okay, so I'm going to hit create. I'm going to go now look at my invoice that generated. And now you can see using the template invoice from Sage, how it now spits out with the summarization on the invoice. Okay, now you want to make sure that you, on your transaction definition for your invoice, you are using the contracts invoice single contract sample. Okay, so in your printed document templates in platform services, you want to tie your transaction definition for that invoice to this form. So it does come out like this. Okay, so just a quick summarization of that and what Sage has made changes on from feedback for time and material invoice summarization by your contract lines. And now I'm going to kick it over to Mike to finish up on bank feeds.
Thank you, Lisa. There's one other thing here left in regards to bank feeds and expenses. They've enhanced some functionality there. Over in bank feeds, which is over in cash management, they've added some additional columns that you can see information on when looking at your bank transactions. So inside bank transactions now, I created a view, and unfortunately I don't have any transactions in my system, but there's a lot of new fields that you can add to your view, and when you drill down into your transactions, be able to see information such as a transaction category, subcategory, bank reference number, and payee ID. All of this payee address information pre-fills in now as well. And all I did here is, if you set up your views in the system, you can turn these on and off by going to Manage Views, Edit, and you'll see here once I get in, there's additional fields that you can now view on your bank feed transactional information. The other area, they've added some integration with bank transactions and bank feeds with corporate card expenses. So now when, if you're doing some, if your employees are required to enter in their corporate card expense details, over in the time and expense area, you'll notice if I go into, I'm going to go into staff expenses, and I'm just going to add a new one. When the user is entering in the expense reports for the corporate credit cards, when they get down to the bottom here, let's put in Robert Jones, for example. And down at the bottom here, you'll notice there's a new button over on the right called Select Credit Card Transactions. So in the past, you'd have to key in the information here manually. Now, if you're using bank feeds and that information's coming in from your credit card, the user who's responsible for the corporate card entry can click Select Credit Card Transactions, and they would see a list of credit card transactions that came in from the corporate card. And they can select this and have it auto-populate back in here that they can code accordingly and post it through the system. So there's some additional setup with that, but that is a great feature that is now in the R2 release coming soon. So that would sum up our release note enhancements for this session. Just, again, to find out more detail on what we've discussed today or on some of the other releases that we didn't touch on, make sure you go back to your homepage here inside Intacct and click right on that Read 2023 R2 Release Notes. And from there, you should be able to get back into some of the information we talked about today, and also see what else is out there. As we weren't able to touch on every little thing, we just tried to pick and choose some of the major points in the release. So if you have any comments or questions, please put them in below. And thank you for joining us.